Developing a Formula 1 car is easy, right? Pile on the downforce, generate more grip as a result, the corner speeds improve, and the lap times come down. While that's an oversimplification, the basic principle is that if you can add ever more downforce that works consistently through a wide range of corner speed profiles without it being excessively draggy, you will get quicker. That was certainly the case under the old F1 rules in place to the end of 2021, as teams kept finding ways to make downforce gains and performance continued on an upward curve. But under the ground effect regulations introduced in 2022, which brought back powerful venturi tunnels in the underfloor, it has become a little more complicated and confusing. In the old days, upgrades didn't always work, but the strike rate was generally pretty good. But in recent years, tales of new packages that either don't correlate with simulations or cause problematic characteristics and make the cars difficult to drive have become the norm. As a consequence, we've seen far more upgrades being dropped wholly or partially, as sometimes teams cobble together mix and match specifications that combine new parts that do work with old, proven designs. On top of that, it's proving more difficult for teams to produce a car that works across a broad range of circuit characteristics and corner types. It could also be difficult to make a car work around a full lap at tracks with a wide range of corner speeds, while teams like Mercedes fluctuate in performance from session to session within the same weekend. This is the third season of these regulations, so why are so many teams still baffled? The current regulations are all about getting the cars to run as low and stiff as possible. Producing vast amounts of downforce is easy enough at low ride heights, but there are a multitude of traps waiting to catch you out. First and foremost, you need to stop the floor from hitting the ground. That's easier said than done, given that the downforce increases exponentially as you get very close to the track surface. This is difficult to simulate, although teams are making progress in finding ways to understand it. There's also the risk of porpoising, which is an aerodynamic effect that can be triggered if the underfloor airflow stalls. Venturi tunnels work by constricting the airflow, then allowing it to expand, accelerating it and creating low pressure under the car and therefore downforce. But if you push this too hard, you can get a stall. So the car rises, the downforce kicks back in, and the process repeats, hence the porpoising motion of the car. The other challenge is that the slower the car, the higher the ride height. So ideally, you want a mechanical platform that keeps the car low, even at low speed, where the ride height will be highest owing to reduced downforce, but that doesn't end up too low, i.e. ploughing the track surface at high speed. As Mercedes technical director James Allison explains, that's made the relationship between the mechanical and aerodynamic design more intimate. Then you have the problem of making the aero itself work across a wide speed range. A big challenge with these cars is generating downforce at the front end at low speed. That means you want plenty of front wing. The trouble is, the large area of the front wing also works in ground effect, so as the speeds increase, there's a risk of ending up with too much grip from the front end and an imbalance that means an unstable rear end. One of the key tools in counteracting that is flexibility of the front wing, which if controlled well, can allow a car to produce the maximum low-speed downforce without creating too much load and unbalancing the car in the high-speed stuff. There's also the problem of sustaining a good, consistent through-corner balance. The simplification of top-body aero, which eliminated the complex barge board seen on F1 cars between 2017 and 2021, has played a big part in that. This also makes the cars very sensitive when in yaw, i.e. when cornering at an angle to the airflow. And cars are in yaw in the corners, where tiny variations in ride height that can be influenced by a vast array of factors, including driving style, make a huge difference. As Fernando Alonso explains, this also means that sometimes you will be faster when not pushing hard because everything falls apart at the limit. So you need a car that pushes the aero limits hard but isn't so critical and on the edge that things come unstuck at high speed. That requires immense control of the mechanical platform, understanding of the fine detail of the floor, and a different way of evaluating the characteristics and performance of new designs compared to the old generation cars. And that's something that all teams have had to adapt to, and some have done better than others. Outside of the chassis rules, there are other confounding factors that make life difficult for teams. The aerodynamic testing regulations, better known as the ATR, heavily restrict the wind tunnel testing and CFD items each team has. All teams are limited, but the better your Constructors' Championship position when the allocations are reset every 6 months, the less you get. That means less research and development time to understand how the car is working aerodynamically. The quality of a team's facilities can also play a part in how effectively it uses this allocation, notably the wind tunnel. But it's not just the wind tunnel and its specification that dictate performance. For example, Aston Martin shares the Mercedes wind tunnel but has fallen far behind it. Team principal Mike Crack says this proves that's not an excuse for its struggles, even though the team is expecting a boost from the new state-of-the-art wind tunnel that is coming online soon at Aston's own facility. The lack of track testing also makes life difficult. Opportunities to run 2024 cars outside of race weekends, 6 of which are sprints featuring just one free practice session, are rare thanks to the strict limitations on testing. Even when the 2024 cars do run outside of events, for example in tyre testing, teams don't control the run programme and can't try new parts. Then there's the cost cap. The baseline spending figure is set at $135 million, and while various adjustments mean the real figure is higher and there's plenty more that is exempt from the cost cap, it has a dampening effect on development rates because you can manufacture fewer parts and your staff headcount is effectively limited. There's also the tyres. Mercedes driver George Russell recently described getting the best out of them as black magic. This isn't really about the mythical bad set of tyres, but reflects just how sensitive the tyres are to conditions, temperatures and preparation, given the available grip can dramatically swing lap times for better or worse. Unravelling the fundamentals of car development from these factors that distort the picture, on top of the countless other tiny details that can have a role, is far from straightforward, so creates more potential for confusion. Add to that the fact that the field is very tightly packed thanks to how restrictive the regulations are, with a performance swing of a tenth or two having the potential to make a big difference to the position both in the lead group and the midfield pack, and it's no surprise that it's become fiendishly difficult to predict the competitive order on any given weekend. It's no coincidence that the team that appears to be the least confused is also the one with the strongest car, McLaren. The McLaren MCL38 is not only seriously fast, but also the most consistent car in the field. It's at its best at high downforce tracks like Zandvoort and Singapore, where it dominated, but while lower downforce circuits can bring rivals into contention, the McLaren is still always at least competitive. Yet McLaren has not brought a proper floor upgrade since the Miami Grand Prix in May. While there have been small tweaks to the floor edges, plus potentially subtle modifications to the unseen underfloor that don't have to be declared, McLaren has over the past 18 months delivered several big upgrade packages that have carried it to the front. The key steps were the Azerbaijan, Austria and Singapore packages last year, prior to the Miami changes this season. As chief designer Rob Marshall says, McLaren likes to gather all the chunks together and deliver it in a big hit, which reduces the risk of smaller steps being phased in, leading to some problematic interactions down the line. Of course, it's easier to do that when you are on top. While McLaren has been consistently strong, others have had more extreme fluctuations. Ferrari has excelled on street circuits and in low downforce trim, but when running higher downforce, it's been more of a struggle, particularly when in longer corners. The Red Bull has also been better at low downforce tracks where efficiency is critical, but has struggled badly with the front end in slower corners and proved unwieldy even in the hands of Max Verstappen. As for the Mercedes, it's been all over the shop given its sensitivity to conditions, but has generally been happiest at higher speed. The midfielders are having similar battles. The Haas is a relatively consistent car but lacks peak downforce. RB has had trouble with through corner balance, and its latest floor upgrade, introduced at Monza in September, hits trouble when there's a wide range of corner speeds around the lap. Williams has improved with its Zandvoort and Singapore upgrades, but the car characteristics have swung with conditions, and Aston Martin has struggled with problematic correlation with many of its upgrades. As technical director Dan Fallows says, its car doesn't always perform as anticipated in every condition. All teams have their own problems, but McLaren's consistent performance proves it's now the team most on top of these rules. So are teams running into a brick wall? Well, as regulations mature, the development rate does generally slow. As Allison has said, all teams are finding the gains are getting more and more asymptotic. As the development progresses, the rate of improvement decreases, so the upward curve of performance becomes ever shallower. There are signs that F1 is getting closer to that point, although performance gains are still being made. 6 months ago, Red Bull appeared to be pushing towards the theoretical limit as its development levelled off. However, McLaren's slightly different concept appears to have a higher ceiling. But how much more performance can be extracted there, and might another team have a higher ceiling down the line? The consensus is that these regs have multiple limitations to come up against when developing the car, and therefore could perhaps have a harder performance limit than the old ones. However, we really don't know whether the top teams are close to the point where they can't make more gains, only move the characteristics around, or if the ceiling can be pushed higher. Ultimately, this is Formula 1, so the answer is likely to be that yes, the cars will continue to get quicker as understanding builds. After all, there is still plenty of confusion about how to get the most from cars under these regulations, and F1 teams are extremely good at learning and improving their knowledge of the underlying science, and when that's applied, then performance usually follows.